Okay. Oh, wrong one. Oh man, this is kind of like a psychotic narcissist time. I mean, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cameras focused on me to do this this blog post, and so man, I feel like the center of attention. Okay, let's get started. Back in 2002, 2003, in the run-up to the war with Iraq, I wasn't really paying attention. I was going about my business. I had other fish to fry, as it were. I caught snippets of the news here and there, you know, Iraq, weapons of mass destruction, all the rest of it. I thought to myself that the people in power knew more or less what they were doing. And so I didn't pay that close of attention to the situation, because I thought that responsible people would do what responsible people are supposed to do, which is, you know, do things responsibly. Who knew? Who would have thunk it? You know, it turned out that, of course, there was no weapons of mass destruction, and Saddam Hussein had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. And, you know, it wasn't a quickie war, or let me rephrase that, it was a very quick war, but an endless occupation. And, you know, the Iraq thing has cost lives, refugees, ruined lives of Iraqis, we all know. I wasn't paying attention to the run-up to the war. I just wasn't. I was just doing other stuff. And as the majority of people, you know, I sort of just caught on the vibe of what the mainstream media was telling me. They told me that, you know, everything was on the up and up. You know, the grown-ups in the room were doing what they were supposed to be doing. They were, you know, carrying out their duties and leading the Western democracies to this war with this awful person for justifiable reasons. And, you know, Colin Powell shaking that little vial with probably talcum powder, if we think about it, but whatever. I thought at the time that those people knew what they were doing and that they weren't doing anything foolish. And of course, it turned out to be wrong. It turned out, of course, that there were no weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein had absolutely nothing to do with the 9/11 attacks. It was all propaganda. Propaganda. Now, we have the Syrian thing that just happened over the last couple of days, you know, some nerve gas attack. And Trump went and sent, you know, 59 missiles, I think it was, to some Syrian airfield to show, I don't know what, you know, 59 Hellfire missiles at a cost of $2 million each represents approximately $120 million. Kick in another $10 million just for the logistics of getting the operation done, and they just blew $130 million on what? What exactly was gained? Nothing. Nothing was gained. It was just a show of force. They blew up some airfield, and on top of that, it says that, you know, the failure rate was like 60% of the missiles on top of that, which is ridiculous. I mean, if you're going to blow $2 million on a missile, they better fucking work. But be that as it may, we have nothing to show for this show of strength, as it were. But we have something very interesting. I was watching CNN, and there was some chick there interviewing a congressman, and she's asking the congressman some semi-pertinent questions, and all of a sudden she interrupts the interview to show a couple of quote-unquote Syrian refugees, these little girls, you know, haltingly saying in English, and clearly their eyes were moving as they read from cue cards or something, how they wish that they just want to go to school and they just want people to save them. It's propaganda, okay? Insofar as Syria, let's go, you know, fact by fact, what we know. We know that in some town, I have it right here as a matter of fact, in the north of Syria, there was some attack that appears to have been chemical in nature. Now, the only people who are reporting the actual facts are Turkish agents. Nobody independent is on the ground. You know, there are videos of dead bodies that appear to be dead children killed by gas attacks, but there's no independent corroboration. It's just what the Turkish are saying. Now, there are dead bodies. Let's grant that. It's in this place called Idlib, some shithole in the northwest of Syria, right on the border with Turkey, interestingly enough. Now, this is what we actually know. We know that Bashar al-Assad is a secularist who is fighting a civil war against Islamists who have coalesced roughly in a group called ISIL. Now, we know that Assad is a fairly ruthless guy, but he's not crazy. In point of fact, he's a very sane individual. I understand that the man is a doctor, a medical doctor, who is an ophthalmologist, working in the United States or in the UK, I think, before his older brother died in some car accident, and he was recalled and basically groomed to become the leader following the death of his father, and became the leader of Syria. And okay, Syria is a shithole. Assad is a secular dictator. He is fighting these religious nuts, and they're all crazy. They're all nuts, by definition, you know. To say that you have, more moderate Islamic supporters is like saying, I have this kind of cyanide that is not quite so lethal. It only kills you in an hour instead of a minute, It's, it's a difference of degree. They're equally crazy. They're all crazy. They're all, These people have been killing each other for centuries. Let them. But be that as it may. Bashar al-Assad is a secularist. Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, is an Islamist. This is very important. It's something that people aren't talking about. See, Erdogan and his regime in Turkey are opposed to Assad, and they have been helping ISIL buying their oil or by subterfuge and what have you. Now, the other people who are arming the conflict are the Qataris and the Saudi Arabians. Now, the Qataris, very interestingly enough, have had a long-standing relationship with the Clintons. They funded the Clinton Foundation for several tens of millions of dollars, as a matter of fact. This is extremely interesting if you think about it. Now, Assad has no motivation to drop chemical weapons in his own country because, number one, he is winning the civil war. Okay? Chemical weapons are a sign of desperation. It's if you think you're actually losing. He's not losing. He is winning. The Russians are with him, fully committed to securing his regime in Syria. Okay? He is winning the war. Just a few weeks ago, his forces recaptured Aleppo, the second largest city in Syria. He's doing fine. No reason for him to drop chemical weapons on his own country. No reason for him to poke the eye of the Western democracies. Why would he? He's doing fine. He's going to recapture his country. Also, understand motivation. Assad realizes that he will never be able to leave Syria alive. Maybe he'll, if he recaptures Syria and everything is status quo ante, he'll be able to fly out and visit his friends, Vladimir Putin and company up in Moscow. But that's the only foreign trip he'll ever be able to make. Syria's leader, Assad, knows that he has to win because he doesn't want to have happen to him what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. Remember, Assad has small children, and that's a great motivator for a secular leader who wants to save himself. It's not just himself, it's, his family, his wife, and not only that, all these people, they want to kill his whole family and everybody. Okay, so Assad is motivated to not do anything foolish. Dropping chemical weapons on his own people would be foolish. And it's unnecessary because he's winning. Who is reporting this? Turkey. Not some independent reporter. So the issue becomes, the Turks have an axe to grind with Assad. They know that he's winning. Two possibilities I see here. Number one, it's a false flag. That is, Turkey or some other player dropped these chemical weapons on these poor villagers, and murdered them all these women and children, and and filmed the whole thing to create a propaganda coup. I mean, this has happened, Gulf of Tonkin resolution. I mean, there's been plenty of false flags, the USS Maine, etc. So it is unclear as to whether this is a false flag, or let's just say that it's not a false flag. Let's just say that somebody else dropped them. Who? ISIL, because they have done it before. In 2013, Barack Obama said that a red line in the sand, as it were, would be the use of chemical weapons in Syria. That would trigger him to go into Syria with a military attack against Assad. Lo and behold, there's a chemical attack. Everybody blamed Assad. Barack Obama, either wisely or out of cowardice, refused to send American troops to Syria. And then a few weeks later, it turned out that ISIL had carried out this chemical attack in 2013. And that Assad had definitely not done it and had no reason to do it. And there was all sorts of technical stuff, about the different kinds of sarin gas, and multiple people confirmed that it was definitely not Assad, it was definitely ISIL. Fine, I'll take their word for it. You can do your own research. But my point is, see, in 2013, somebody tried to force the Americans to get into Syria by carrying out a false flag operation. And it was ISIL at that time, okay? Who's to say that it's not ISIL doing it now? We don't really know, because the people reporting this news are controlled by the Turks, and the Turks are essentially allies against Assad with ISIL. So the news source that we're getting, okay, the only source, this bottleneck, is coming from Turkey. The people, the witnesses, they're all dodgy. People are reporting that these people are all criminals and all kinds of dodgy people who are reporting this stuff. The video footage that's coming, it's coming from people who have track records of being dodgy. So it sounds bullshitty to me, because it is bullshitty. Now, let's look at what's going on in the Western democracies and the mainstream media. And this is the important point. See, when you get a dose of propaganda, see, they don't tell you it's propaganda. It's not like they show up on CNN and say, hello, I'm going to tell you some propaganda now. And it's propaganda that will help our cause, a cause that we believe in. And so we're going to tell lies to you so that you believe what we're telling you. It doesn't work that way. See, propaganda is they tell you something that seems plausible. Like what happened to me in 2002, 2003. It sounded plausible that Saddam Hussein was, murdering his own people with gas, and it sounded plausible that he had weapons of mass destruction. It sounded plausible that he had something to do with 9/11. I wasn't paying attention. So, okay, go. I mean, you guys know what you're doing. Fine, go. And they went, and it turned out to be bullshit. Well, it's a little bit more sophisticated than that. It turned out that most of the people who had been advocating the war with Iraq served two masters. Now, didn't they? I mean, they might have been on the National Security Council, but they were essentially agents of foreign governments, and we're not going to name that foreign government, because if we do, in the current environment, it's Voltaire's old saying, who are you not allowed to criticize? That's the person who's in power. So we all know what happened in 2002, 2003 in the run-up to the war in Iraq. Now, what's going on now? See, on the one hand, you've got the Syrian, Assad, and his Syrian forces, and the military, what have you, backed by the Russians, right? Secularists. On the other, you have ISIL, and you have the other religious crazies, and they are being backed by Qatar, Saudi money, and Turkey. Turkey is not doing it, obviously, because they have political issues with Europe and the United States, but suddenly they're buying ISIL's oil. You buy somebody's oil, you're giving them cash. I mean, they're funding them, essentially. Okay? So, there are two sides here. And one side, the Turks, say this bullshit about Syrian gas attack. So, what does the Western democracies do? Oh, they have like this whole kerfluffle, that, Assad's a monster. Yesterday, I'm down at Oxford Circus, and I see this pathetic little march of people chanting, and they have these placards, and I wish I'd filmed it, but my stupid GoPro ran out of battery. They're walking down the street with this placard saying, blah, 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 chemical Assad, and equating Assad with Hitler and Putin, and they're all Hitler. Now, here's the thing. See, there are people who are motivated in the Western democracies to have a war with Syria. See, it is to their benefit. If they have a war with Syria, a lot of weapons manufacturers are going to be very happy. I mean, look at the Hellfire missiles, 60% failure rate. Yeah. But, you know, the manufacturer of those, weapons, they got their $2 million per missile. You're talking about $120 million and 60% failure rate. I mean, come on, right? So you're basically saying that you got 60% failure rate. Doing the math quickly, it seems like what, $72 million was just basically money that's just thrown out the window and burned, or rather, given to these weapons manufacturers for defective weapons or what have you. Okay, look, there are a lot of people who benefit with a war with Syria, okay? The Saudis want a war with Syria. They want America to stick their nose in and get into that, quagmire, the Qataris, that's why they funded the Clinton Global Initiative and all that shit. You know what, you think the Qataris just give millions and millions of dollars to the Clintons because they're such nice people? No, come on, they want something for their money. That's why people give money. They want something for it. You see? See, when I go down to the ice cream shop and I give a couple of pounds to the guy behind the counter, I want my ice cream. See? That's why I give him the money. I want something for that money. The Qataris, they paid the Clintons. They paid the Clintons, and, well, Clinton, Hillary lost. She was gung-ho to go to war with Syria. And now they're sort of like maneuvering Trump into going to war. Now, Trump went and sent these 59 missiles to Syria. Two possibilities, okay? Number one, he's actually going to go to war with Syria. Who knows? I mean, the guy's kind of nuts. Even though he's been campaigning and said for months and months and months that Syria was a mess and there was pointless to go and that Hillary was crazy because she wanted to go to war with Syria, which is accurate. You don't have to like Trump to know that what he was saying was completely accurate insofar as Hillary Clinton, that number one, she was crazy to go to a war in Syria, and number two, there was nothing to be won for the United States by going to war with Syria. Although there was a lot to be won for a lot of the people paying for Hillary's campaign. Yeah, but that's okay. Now, Trump, you like him or not, I don't like him. I think he's nuts. I think he's a clown. But he was right. Syria is pointless. Now, he sent these missiles. Is this a first step to going into Syria with troops on the ground or what have you? Or is this a political solve? Trump is a smart customer. I mean, his detractors on the left especially, they never quite seem to understand this. This guy is not stupid. I mean, he's a smart man. He's a smart customer who knows more or less what he's doing. He's tactically brilliant, strategically brilliant. He showed it. He won. You don't win the presidency on a shoestring budget because you're stupid. He's smart. He knows more or less what he's doing second to second, though sometimes he seems to be flying by the seat of his pants. So let's assume that the man is rational. So two possibilities. One, he's actually going to go to war with Syria, going against everything he said and every campaign promise he's made, and going against his base. That's one possibility. Second possibility, he's doing this as a sop to the neoconservatives, the neocon warmonger crazies, Hillary among them. He throws them a bone, as it were. He throws them this shit, these missiles, and he can say, hey, look, see, there. I went to war. I blew up some shit. Now leave me alone. Maybe that's a possibility. Now, of course, by blowing off the Russians and pissing them off because they got pissed by this attack, automatically Trump, the whole Russia thing, Trump is a Russian agent, which is just so much crazy bullshit. It's surprising that it's lasted this long, but all of a sudden that kind of talk is just foolish. I mean, nobody can take anybody seriously who's saying this kind of shit. So I think if Trump is being as smart as he has shown himself to be so far, I think this is a one-off. Now, let's go back to the propaganda issue, which I think is more interesting. See, why do we call it the mainstream media? Why does the mainstream media matter? Because the mainstream media is the source of news for most people. You see, when you do a deep dive into YouTube, you quickly run into videos like this one that talk about how it's all so much bullshit, that You know, there's no way that Assad would be foolish enough to launch this kind of attack. But see, the people who are like sort of like brushing over the news and not really paying attention, like I wasn't paying attention to the news back in 2003. You know, we get our news from the mainstream media. We sort of like half an ear. You know, a quick glance at some headline, at some at the train station. You know, the guy selling newspapers, and we sort of like glance over. Oh yeah, Syria, Assad bad. We sort of like tune into CNN where we're clicking, click, CNN, oh, poor little girls, Syrian girls, all that evil Assad, click, oh, Netflix, or whatever. You know, my point is, see, when we're not paying attention to the news, the mainstream media is incredibly effective at spreading lies. Like this lie that Assad had something to do with it, because he didn't. It's a blind man can see it. It's a lie. It's an outright lie. And not by a little bit. I mean, you just have to dig a little bit and you automatically realize that there is no way Assad would be so foolish. A week or two ago, you know, the US government, Tillerson, essentially said that there wasn't going to be any kind of regime change in Syria, because basically he said, you know, Assad is screwed in deep and tight. He's not going to get pulled out of there. You know, he's staying and we have to live with him. You know, yeah, that's the truth of the matter. Assad is staying and he's doing fine. And then this shit happens. You know, it doesn't make any kind of rational sense. And Assad, he has a lot of faults, but he's not a madman. He's not foolish. He knows more or less what he's doing. He is motivated, because he knows that if he loses, him and his entire family will die. That's a great motivator. Because see, you know, the guys on the George W. Bush team, when they failed with the whole Iraq thing, you know, what happened to them? They got canned. Well, they didn't even get canned. They, you know, left office and went on to work at think tanks for, you know, mid-six-figure salaries. Yeah, Assad is going to die. His children will be strung up and raped and mutilated and murdered right in front of him. If he loses, he is motivated. There's no way that he's going to make a mistake. He has not made a mistake so far. So all this shit that he did, it's bullshit. So the mainstream media is reporting this bullshit. Why? Why are they reporting it? Because the mainstream media is a tool of the neocons and the establishment. Because the establishment in the United States wants a war. Why do they want a war? Because they are being paid. You remember what I said about ice cream? You give £2 and you get your strawberry ice cream cone. Why do you pay the £2? Because you want that ice cream. You want that fucking ice cream. The Qataris, the Saudis, they're paying. They want a war with Syria. They want, let me phrase that. They want the United States to go to war with Syria because they want Bashir Assad out. Because he is a secularist. Because they're all fucking nuts. They care about this religious shit. Yeah? Now, what are we supposed to do? Now, what are we supposed to do about this? You who are listening to me, you're a young guy, you're starting out in life. I want you to pay attention to the MSN, because these guys are showing you what propaganda looks like. Now, this propaganda is very transparent, so it's a great case study. Look at it. Look what's going on. Like that girl I told you on CNN, she was, you know, talking to some congressman and she interrupted the interview to show, you know, some staged little Syrian girls, some Syrian refugees saying scripted lines. You know, that's propaganda. That's what it looks like. And there's going to be more of it, okay? Because the establishment in the United States are losing control, because the American economy is crippled and falling apart. You know, the whole thing is falling apart, okay? And the more that they try to hold on to power, the worse things are going to get. And there's going to be more propaganda. And it's going to be more blatant. Okay, you just wait. You think that this kind of propaganda is like, you know, the epitome of, the pinnacle rather, of what propaganda can look like in the Western democracies? No. It's going to be much, much worse. Because you see, the people in power, the establishment, who have been paid off by foreign governments, who are working for their own best interests rather than the best interests of the United States, well, these people, see, They need a war to justify their salaries. They need a war. They're not doing it for shits and giggles. They need a war, and so they're going to do everything in their power to start a war. They're going to start a war, and they're going to use the mainstream media to sell this war to the people. And since most people don't pay attention to the news, since most people just sort of like pay attention to the surface of the news, you know, to what they glance at the headlines, to when they're skipping through the channels and come across CNN. See, this kind of propaganda is effective with them. That's why the mainstream media is so important. It's not because what they say is false. It's that they can convince people, because even though, how can I put this? Because the mainstream media is superficial, but it covers all the surface. Yeah? Whereas the alternative media, stuff like YouTube, stuff like this very channel, we take deep dives into stuff. We're very deep and very concentrated and focused. And so you can go across the internet and find all kinds of guys who will go on and on and on and about whatever particular topic you're interested in. I saw a guy who tested like 5 different microphones, wireless microphones, because I bought one. And he tested 5 different microphones. And he went on and on for 30 minutes about the goddamn thing. Yeah? He talked on and on. And, you know, focus, focus, focus. Going deep, 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 deep. Yeah? The mainstream media doesn't do that. It's superficial. But it's everywhere. See? I had to go looking for that video about the wireless microphones. And I found it. And I found this crazy guy who had like 616 views on his video. And I watched that video and I wanted to kiss that guy's feet, because in that 30, 20, 25 minute video, or whatever it was, he explained everything there was to know about wireless microphones. I wanted to kiss him, but it took me a while to find him. You know, the mainstream media is everywhere. They are everywhere, and that is why they're so dangerous. Because they can spread propaganda so easily. Because you ask your friends, 4 out of 5 will say that, who care about this stuff, will say, oh yeah, Assad, he seems like an evil guy who bombed all these people with sarin gas or whatever. You know, they're going to have no idea that the information is coming from the Turks. They're going to have no idea that this town was right on the border with Turkey. They're going to have no idea that Assad is winning the war and has no motivation to do this. They're going to have no idea that the Qataris and the Saudis and the Turks are all on the side of ISIL, and they all want to knock Assad down, and that people in the establishment in the United States are pushing all that they can to equate Assad with Hitler, because most people don't care. And so they just they go with the flow. That's why the mainstream media propaganda is so dangerous. That's why you have to keep an eye out for it and watch out for it, because it can make you think terrible things. And the thing is, in a democracy, it's one man, one vote. What you think, it changes how you vote. It changes what politicians do. Okay. Not a very good video. I don't know. Hi there, sorry about the sound. The primary mic battery ran out, and then the B camera battery ran out. And so I was reduced to the soundtrack from the computers. Sorry about that. If you like this video, please subscribe. Thank you.